Good evening and welcome to Tamil Heritage Trust monthly heritage talk. For those of you who are new to Tamil Heritage Trust, let me give you a very brief and quick introduction. Tamil Heritage Trust was set up way back in 2010, and since then we've been operating with the objective of understanding, appreciating, documenting, disseminating, and celebrating India's rich heritage. And towards this, we run a number of and conduct a number of programs. The monthly heritage talk, which happens on the first Saturday of every month, has been going on for 12 years now. We also conduct an annual seminar called the Pech Kacheri. The Kacheri refers to the music season that we have here, and typically the Pech Kacheri is also held around the same time in December. We also conduct an Indology festival, which we started a couple of years ago. This year, we've just concluded the festival. This year's theme was Temple Builders of Medieval India from the 8th to 13th centuries. And we had 14 different scholars from across the country, from Assam to Kerala, to Gujarat, to Rajasthan, to Madhya Pradesh, and so on, to come and speak to us about the temple building dynasties that ruled India during the early medieval period in our country's history. That was concluded in early June. All our talks are available on our YouTube channel. You can search for Tamil Heritage Trust in the YouTube search box and you will find our channel. We have over almost 200 videos that you can watch. All of them are, of course, access is free. Please do subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to receive notifications for future events. We also conduct workshops for interested heritage lovers. For example, we conduct how to see a temple, we talk about iconography, temple architecture, etc. We conduct courses on scripts of India, such as Pallava Grantham, etc. We also conduct something called a site seminar, where people prepare and study a certain set of monuments, a certain set of historical sites by visiting them with the due preparation and so on. We have instituted awards to support people who are in the area of heritage dissemination. The THT Professor S. Swaminathan Heritage Award is named after our co-founder. You can see him there handing over the award to the first two editions. And most recently, we have been requested by the family of Sri V. Venkaya, who was India's first Indian chief epigraphist to the government. And his family has requested us to administer an award in his name, which has been established. So the first edition of the V. Venkaya Epigraphy Award has just been announced. We've invited nominations, we've received nominations, and we should be very shortly announcing the winner of the first V. Venkaya Epigraphy Award for 2022. We also have a fledgling program called Alamarave, which is for teachers for heritage, where we encourage and assist school teachers to reach out with the message of heritage to all students who are interested in Indian heritage by setting up heritage clubs and conducting events for them, etc. We now come to today's event, and it's an absolute privilege for me to welcome Dr. Arvind Jamkhedkar, one of the most distinguished scholars that we have today in India. I'd like to first of all thank him for accepting our invitation very promptly and delivering this talk today. When we talk of a subject, there is sometimes a little question that is asked, in this subject, what's the difference between an expert and a master? And the normal answer given is an expert is somebody who's written the book on the subject, and a master is someone about whom the books are written. And I'm extremely happy to say that I know of at least two books that have been dedicated to our speaker of the day, Dr. Jamkhedkar, for his contributions in a wide range of topics. His areas of specialization can best be described. And we've never introduced a senior speaker with a cartoon, but I thought this is the best way to introduce him. And as you can see here, his range of interests include Sanskrit, Ardhamagadi, Jainism, Buddhism, rock cut caves, archaeology, temple architecture, iconography, art history, and so on and so forth. And people who've known him know that he can ride all of these horses at one and the same time as well. Dr. Jamkhedkar was the chairman of the Indian Council of Historical Research, ICHR, from 2018 to 22. He is the chancellor of the Deccan College of PG and Research, deemed as a university in Pune. He was the director of the KJ Somaya Center for South and Southeast Asian Studies, Mumbai. And for 20 years, he was the Directorate of Archaeology and Museums in Maharashtra. He took his BA in Sanskrit and Ardhamagadi, an MA in Sanskrit linguistics, and completed his PhD in ancient Indian culture. He was known as a great teacher. He has been teaching and guiding PhD students across multiple institutions, University of Nagpur, KJ Somaya Center, and so on. As an archaeologist, he has been involved in several field excavations of the Chalcolithic, megalithic, and early historical periods at various places, almost 20 of them, for many of which he has had also the privilege of writing the reports on the excavations. He's a member of boards and committees in academic circles and research institutions, and editorial boards of journals, on conservation committees, all of which are too numerous to list here. He's been honored and feted at over 24 international and national conferences. He has a range of publications to his credit, excavation reports, like I mentioned, monographs, critical editions and translation, entries in encyclopedias, including the Collins Dictionary of World Art and the Encyclopedia of Indian Temple Architecture by M.A. Dhaki and others. And of course, his research papers, articles, and essays are close to 100 and counting. These are some of the books that he has published. The Vasudeva Hindi is a cultural study, is based on his PhD thesis. He's contributed to the World Heritage series on Ajanta, the Monumental Legacy series that Oxford brings out. The Verula Mahatmya is a critical edition and a translation. He's also an expert on the Vakatakas. Kaun Hote Vakataka is his book, and this is a collection of his essays as well. So we are indeed privileged to have someone as distinguished as Dr. Jamkhedkar, and we welcome him. And before I hand over to him, I must also thank Dr. Kumud Kanitkar, who had introduced us to him, and due to whose assistance we have requested Dr. Jamkhedkar to talk to us. I will now hand over to Dr. Arvind P Jamkhedkar. Thank you, sir.
Sir.
Thank you very much for the kind words of introduction to me. As I can simply say that, well, I had the opportunity of working with and under so many great persons, and that is how I could do something in the field of archaeology, Indology, and other disciplines. Today we are going to talk about one of the Shaktiputers, you can say. Shaktiputers is a concept probably known to all of you. It goes back to a legend wherein Sati, wife of Shiva, she consigned herself to the flames of fire as she felt insulted, as her husband was not invited to a sacrifice by her father. In that incarnation, and then Shiva became mad with anger and, you can say, desperation, and therefore he started moving all over India, carrying the dead body of Sati. And in order to, in a way, lessen these things, though in a very unusual and apparently a cruel way, Vishnu went on cutting different limbs of Sati, and they fell at 51 places all over India. And those are known as the Shaktiputers. So one of the Shaktiputers, there are 3 Shaktiputers in Maharashtra, as we understand it. Those are, one is at Kolhapur, quite a famous place, wherein Mahalakshmi is there, she is worshipped. Then there is another place called Tuljapur in Marathwada area again, that is earlier Nizam's dominions. And that is Tulja Bhavani. In fact, the place is known after Tulja Bhavani, who was the tutelary deity of the great Maratha warrior Shivaji and his ancestors. The third is Renuka Devi, in a way, wife of Jamadagni Rishi, whose legend is quite famous because once in the earlier life, Parshurama had to kill her at the instance of his father. And then, of course, he very smartly, he killed her with his parachute, beheaded her. But later on, when the father was in a somewhat back. Now the same legend is carried forward, and now Renuka is worshipped. Curiously enough, that is not a coincidence, in the form only of her face. So this is one of the 51 Shaktiputers or 108 Shaktiputers as told in the Devi Bhagavata, 11th century AD. Now, these are just to show you the map, meaning some of the places of these Shaktiputers, they are presently in Pakistan. For example, the Hilaj Devi is in Pakistan. Then in the north, in Kashmir, there is another Devi. In Assam, there is the famous Kamakhya Devi. And all over India, you find all those places. It will be a separate topic to talk on this particular subject, but we are here concerned with one that is at Mahur. The place presently is now known as Mahur, and Mahur means Matrugriha, that is the house of the mother. So it is naturally named after the incident that, well, she took her residence there, and therefore it is called the house of the mother. This is a project which we have taken up under the auspices of the Asiatic Society of Mumbai. We presented a project in which we proposed to study the Skanda Puranas, you can say Purvardha, Uttarardha, and this Amali Grama Mahatmya as also Renuka Mahatmya. So there are about 10,000 verses, which of course don't appear in the critical edition of the Skanda Purana. But as Skanda Purana was one of the latest of the Puranas to be recognized, and you can say latest of the Puranas, wherein many matters were added later on. It was quite popular. So on the lines of some of its sections, for example, there is something like a Nagara Khanda, which describes the various sacred places in the Nagara area, that is, you can say in Gujarat and Rajasthan. The areas are known as Nagara, where from the Nagara Brahmins come. Then there is one Reva Khanda, that is a Khanda, a section of Sahyadri Purana, the Skanda Purana, praising the various Tirtha Kshetras on Narmada. So similarly, there is a Kedara Khanda. So on those lines, the people must have thought, scholars must have thought that, well, the holy places in Maharashtra, that is coastal area, and you can say this area, that is Marathwada area, that is on the banks of Godavari, those have not been taken notice of, probably the pious people of India, and therefore they have a Sahyadri Khanda, and that is, as I told you, it is about 10,000 stanzas. It is supported by the Ministry of Culture, and we are working, and there are about 4 volumes which will come out of this. The present volume on Mahur, or Amali Grama Mahatmya as we call it, as it is called in the Purana, It contains about 2,500 verses, and the whole text along with the critical edition, which was prepared with the help of 13 manuscripts, most of them brought from Nepal and other places, including the British Library. That now volume is ready. It is about 600 to 700 pages, complete with, you can say, an index, then a list of various Tirtha Kshetras which are there, and the various legends which are being recounted in those things. Now, when we saw this particular section of the Skanda Purana, we realized that it is quite a big Mahatmya, a glory which has been told. And when we studied more and more this particular thing, we realized that, well, this can contribute a lot. The information which is there, that is the glory of Renukādevī, which has been sung in about 80 to 100 adhyayas, it is quite important, and that might shed light on the medieval history of India. Just to give you an idea what is the importance of this particular text, I searched through the very famous volumes edited by Yazdani, and the second volume, wherein P.M. Joshi and other scholars were there, early and medieval history of the Deccan. There are hardly any entries talking about, not to mention about Renukādevī, but about the bones who are very closely associated with the cult of this Devi. And therefore, we thought that why not think it from the point of view of reconstructing the medieval history with the help of archaeological, literary, and as also you can say other type of sources, that is the oral tradition, which is there, the tradition of performing arts, which is there, what is called many times the tradition of the tangible and non-tangible heritage, as we call it. So when we'll take a small review of the work done in this particular direction by three professors, that is Professor Arvind Mehta of Baroda University and Professor Pathi of Marathwada University, which is near you can say the Ellora Caves, Aurangabad, and Professor M.S. Mate of the Deccan College. These were the three persons who have done a lot of work in medieval history and medieval archaeology. So there, Professor Mehta says that, well, he has worked on various types of things. Say, for example, the raid on Chapaner by Humayun, the Mughal emperor, you can say. So Chapaner was a city, and it had a very short life. Chapaner hardly prospered for not more than 150 years. And what is the connection of Humayun in that? So when he went through the various accounts which are left in the Mughal core, they were all confusing. They were contradicting. The incident was not very far off. It was in the times of Humayun in 17th century or something like that. And then he, with the help of his excavations as also explorations at Chapaner city as also the fort, and he could give an answer how the whole successive events must have happened with the help of the architectural as also archaeological, you can say, archaeological evidences. He gives us another example, and that of the temple, Kalimata temple at Baroda. Curiously enough, this temple is virtually a part of the rampart which was around the city of Baroda in the medieval times. And this Kalimata happens to be the tutelary deity of the Maharajas of Gaikwad. So naturally, one would expect that it should be a very big temple, and it should be somewhere in the heart of the city because they were quite influential rulers. and they are still devoted. The royal family is still devoted as the tutelary deity of their family. So why such a thing has happened? There is a story which is told to us, and that story tells us that Kalimata was very much pleased with Damaji Gaikwad, who is supposed to be the person from whom the royal dynasty started. And he said that, why don't you come to my place? So she was coming with him, but she had given him a condition that you should not have any disbelief in me. You should not turn back because I am following you. And somehow he could not control himself. And it is told that, well, she stopped at the rampart itself, and therefore the temple is there. So we'll find that why the temple is there, this is a mythic way of explaining the humble origins of the Kalimata, who happens to be actually the deity of the royal family. Then professors Mate was a professor in Deccan College of Archaeology, and Professor Pathi, who was in the Marathwada University, which is now known after Dr. Ambedkar. They took up the cause of trying to understand the medieval history of Devgiri, or Daulatabad as it is known. It was named as Daulatabad after the kings from Delhi, that is, you can say, the Sultan rulers from Delhi, and they took charge of it. This was the capital of the Yadavas. And therefore, many of the monuments which are there, many of the things which have been found during the excavations or surface explorations, they could not be explained with the help of the accounts, the usual accounts to which we adhere to in the case of medieval history. And therefore, these two professors, they took up a good project of which lasted for more than 4 years. So they made a very good survey and tried to explain the existence and some of the facts and events which are associated with this great fort, which was probably built by the Yadavas, as they were the vessels of the famous Shaktiputers, that great family. Now, you are seeing in the background the fort itself, but in the outer area, which is covered within the ramparts, there is a very important monument of the Jami Mosque, because any important mosque which is associated with the royal family or a city, it is called the Jami Masjid because it has royal connections. And when they surveyed this particular mosque, there are doubts regarding as to when it was built and other things, though we know that it must have been in the post-Yadava times. What they did was take a survey of all the pillars which were used for the construction of the Jami Mosque. As everybody knows, in the early period of the Sultanates, it was very normal. They didn't have their own style of architecture or any such thing. And all their architecture was made of the ruins of the raised temples which they had conquered, the areas in which they happened to be there. So, and all these pillars many times had the depiction of jinnahs on that. So these were definitely the Jain temples. By counting the pillars, by calculating the different types of temples which could have been built there, they came to the conclusion that at least 5, and in the least, at least 3 Jain temples should have been there. The tradition tells us, and if you go to literature, we find that there is a reference in the Jain literature that there were 3 temples which were built by different merchant princes in the in the vicinity or in the city of Devgiri. So this is the way these are the type of pillars. If you are familiar in North India, if you go to Qutub Minar and other places, wherein all such early Sultanate monuments, they were made out of the pillars and other architectural members from the pull down Jain temples or Hindu temples. Now again, in those excavations, they have found these architectural members which have been stored in the museum of the Deccan College. We can make out that the temples originally must have been belonging to the Jains only. So these are the various, there were at least more than 100 images of the jinnahs which were found in the debris after the clearance work was taken and excavations were conducted. And therefore one can make out that the followers of the jinnahs who lived in Devgiri, they were both of the Digambara and Svetambara, you can say, section of the Jains. Now on the basis of this, as also on the basis of the map, you see herein we can see the fort itself, which is 1 and 2. Then outside there is a rampart which is there, that is 3. And the 5 and 4 and 5 and 6, they indicate the city which was there. So with the help of the traces which they found, as also with the evidence regarding the mosque of which the plan is there, they could decide about the date, and they could also guess about, and therefore a sort of an isometric view as to how, on the basis of the excavations, both the excavators, they had an isometric plan, you can say, of the temples. And here at least the remains of 5 temples are there, of which the 3 must have been affiliated to Jainism. Now we come to the main legion, meaning after giving you a sort of a review of the work which was done by my predecessors like Mate, then Pati and Professor R.M. Mehta, I thought that, well, here is a legend which can be studied from that point of view. The legend is known right from the times of Mahabharata, that Renuka was killed, and once at the instance of his father, by Parshurama, but then a new legend is created. And whereas earlier the usual ashrama of these two was located near Kanyakubja, which was the place from where Renuka, as a princess, she was a Kshatriya princess married to Jamadagni, coming from the Bhargava Brahmin family, and they had 5 sons. The most famous was Parshurama, one of the incarnations of Vishnu. So the legend goes on that, well, later on, when he was in the ashrama, there was a Kamadhenu which was there. Again, this is the motif which is quite common in South India also, that there was a Kamadhenu and Sahasrarjuna wanted to possess that. And therefore, when Jamadagni did not agree with him, he virtually killed him with his sword, beheaded him, and in her attempt to save her husband, she received 21 wounds. And the legend now tells or converts or explains why Parshurama made the earth devoid of Kshatriyas, as it is called, Nikshatriya Prithvi. So he killed the prominent Kshatriya families and kings 21 times, and then gave away the conquered earth to Kashyapa. So here the legend is taken, it takes a different turn, that when he is about to cremate them, there is a heavenly voice, and that tells that you should not cremate your parents here. You should go to a place which is a virgin land. So he says, how to identify that? He was carrying the parents like Shravana, if you have heard the story of Shravana and Dasharatha, into two, you can say, baskets. In one basket was the dead body of Jamadagni. In the other basket was the not dead actually. She was dying because she had been severely hurt and wounded by Sahasrarjuna. So the indication, it was told by the heavenly voice that you carry them southwards, and when the bamboo pole which is there, it will have sprouts, new sprouts. That is the place wherein you should cremate your parents. So he comes to that area of Mahur on the banks of the river, which is a tributary of Godavari. So he comes in that region. Then with the help of Yogi Dattatreya, he completes that particular ceremony. And Parshurama was so much sad about the whole thing that he requested his father and mother to meet him again after their death. So the mother said that you should come, you should pray for us after 1 month and we'll come out. But then Parshurama was so much sad that he remembered his parents and called them before 1 month. And therefore, she emerged only up to her face. And then it is explained that, well, only that face which we had seen at the beginning of this show, that face only is worshipped. Below that, there is the head of the Sahasrarjuna who was responsible for their death. And this way, a new Peter comes in. So she, in a way, consigns herself to the fire, and therefore she is equated with Sati also. And then the legend tells us that she was actually an incarnation of Parvati. So Jamadagni becomes Shiva, she becomes Parvati, the Sati, and she, in a way, dies in the fire along with the dead body of her. So she becomes a Sati. There is another Sati who is associated with this legend, and that is Anasuya. Anasuya and Atri are the parents of Yogi Dattatreya. They are also supposed to be living here. That is why Dattatreya is there. And she is also a Sati who is responsible for the revival of the Rishi called Matanga Rishi, who was put on a spike as a punishment by the king, and then the dead person, the husband of a Sati, he is also revived, and this way all these are connected in some way or other with the concept of Sati, and therefore now there is a Peter, one of the Peters associated with the ancient Sati has come up there. Now, the legend, the most important part of the legend, which has been given in the chapter, and that talks about the origin of a typical dance which is there. And this dance is associated with Renuka, and it is called the Gondali dance. This was performed by the Bhuta Mata, that is by Kali, who is also Chamunda, after the killing of the two demons. She performed this particular dance in order to please Renukādevī, who is the incarnation, as I told you, of Parvati, wife of Shiva, and these are performed in a particular way. This was the dance of revelry after the killing of the Asuras. There are also legends how the type of drum which is usually used in the Gondal dance, that is made of made from the dead remains of another asura, that is the Narakasura. Then there is also this musical instrument, single string musical instrument, which is called Chandaka, and that is to be used. Similarly, they hold various, you can say, torches in their hand, and with the torches in their hand, this musical instrument being worked upon, and with the dance, that Gondala dance is performed by the Gondalis, as they are called. Now, this is a community. In Maharashtra, there are so many castes which are there. They are associated and they are called as Gondalis because they perform this particular dance, but they are across the whole section of the different castes. So it seems that every important caste had its own Gondalis. And in the temple also associated with Tulja Bhavani or this, there are priests, as also you can say the Bhagats or shamans from these particular castes who do the ritual of doing the puja for their own, you can say, devotees. This is the way you can say the present Renuka Mata is shown. This was a temple which was built in very late, in something like 15th, 16th century. After many times it was, Aurangzeb was also is supposed to have come here, and the sultans of Vijapur and also of Golconda, they were also associated with this, because ultimately in their dominion it was there. So the Gonds, who are the local community, they were ruling in this particular area, right from the banks of Narmada up to this place and also up to Godavari. So the Gond is the community, and this is all forest area, and therefore otherwise also it is referred to as Gondwana. If you refer to Monier-Williams dictionary, it will give the meaning of this, the Gonds as also Gondavanam. So it is there in the medieval times used as a Sanskrit word, and this establishment of the temple is there. To the right, you will see, unfortunately, we could not take a photograph, but this is the image of Parashurama, her son. That image is also there, and he naturally holds in his hand the bow and arrow, as also his battle axe, and he is worshipped there just below at the foot of that small hill, which is part of the whole plateau wherein this temple is situated. Now we are coming, as I had already made a mention, that this Devi, that is the Renuka Devi, has got 2 or 3 important personalities associated in her religion. One is you can say Dattatreya, who is supposed to be one of the incarnations of Vishnu and very much praised in the Bhagavata Purana, which is dated roughly to 7th century AD. So Datta is there. Then Datta's personality also has its own growth in a different way. Even though he was one of the incarnations of Vishnu and known as a yogi, by about 8th, 9th century AD, he is reflected, or he becomes part of the tantric tradition also. So he is associated with the Panchamakaras, as are called. Otherwise, Dattatreya is supposed to be an avatar of Vishnu, and therefore he should not be associated with such things. But somehow he comes associated with the Siddhas, the Tantric Siddhas, and therefore all the Tantric rites which are associated with it, that is the Panchamakaras, including the worship with liquor and non-vegetarian diet, or flesh is offered to her. So in order to explain, you can say, how Renuka Mata has got, because she happens to be the wife of a rishi or a sage, Vedic sage. So how come that such type of offerings are given? So explanation through Dattatreya has been given, that Dattatreya already was a Siddha yogi, and he was living at this place. And that is why Parashurama was called at this place to cremate her and create a shrine in her memory. The third level, you can say, if we come to the later period, we will find that Dattatreya becomes a yogi who is an avadhuta, who has washed off all the impurities, and he is upholder of the Sanatana Dharma. So the role of Vishnu, Vishnu's incarnation as Datta, simply as a yogi, who is the sustainer of the world. The second phase is he becomes a tantric yogi, and later on, with the change when the Muslim powers or the Islamic powers become very powerful, then he becomes an agent to establish the established Sanatana Dharma. So we'll find he's also associated with other you can say, reformistic, you can say, sects like Mahanubhavas, who are Vaishnavas, but they don't accept the authority of the Vedas. Then he is also revered by tantric followers like the yogis who come under the title of Matsyendranatha and Gorakhnatha, so Nathapanthis. And he is also part of the Varkaris, who is again a Vaishnava tradition, which is, you can say, not reformistic, but following the Karma Yoga and headed by a person like Gyaneshwar, who was a Natha yogi, but spread the cult of Vithoba throughout Maharashtra and the Deccan. So this is the mythological background in which this Devi has arisen. Now, as I told you, Datta's parents, there is a hill nearby, Anusuya hill is there, small hill is there, and on that the temples of the parents of Datta, they are there. This is the temple dedicated to them. Then Datta himself is associated with a small lake which is there at the foot of the Mahur, you can say, hill. And there it is said by legend that, well, he every day in the night, he comes back, he in the morning starts at Kolhapur, goes to Prayag, and then comes back to a place in Godavari, and for resting in the night, he comes here. So there is a Dattatreya temple now, which is in the hands of the Mahanubhavas, who are not a Vedic tradition, a very popular Vaishnava tradition, and you can say non-Vedic but reformistic. Now there are so many legends which get associated, and the legends are told about the coming up of this Kshetra. That is the holy place of what we are calling Amalaki Grama. Then it is also called Mahur, as I explained to you, that the city of the mother. So usually when such legends they come up, they will say that it is there right from the Kruta Yuga. In Kruta Yuga, it was called Amali Grama. Then in Dwapara, it was called by another name, and now it is called the Mahur or Matapura, which is the city of, then the river which is connected with him. Now that river is also associated with Brahma. When Vishnu washed his feet, the river flowed from there, and that river is called Pranita. And the mountain on which this whole temple complex is there now is identified with Meru himself. And therefore, now an attempt is made that this is probably the most important part of India or Bharatavarsha right from the times of Kruta Yuga, because the Meru himself has come here and all the sacred mountains are there. Pranita, who is now identified with Ganga, she is also there. And therefore, we'll find, as we analyze these legends, we find that all the three important gods, that is the Trinity, that is Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesha, they get associated through different legends with this particular place. And then they are told, which is the presiding deity is Vishnu itself. And he tells them that you should rest here. Because the temple which I showed you for Datta is the place where the Shesha Shayana Vishnu is supposed to be reclining there. In fact, the Amali tree is the myrobalan tree, which was there at the time of the churning of the ocean, and from that it came up as one of the sacred places, and it was planted here near the image of the Sheshashayi Vishnu. Then there are some monuments which are there, which have been repaired, but they can be dated to at least, you can say, 12th century AD, that is the Yadava times. So all the monuments which we saw, that they are from Yadava times to virtually, you can say, the post or the Sultanate period or the pre-Maratha period. So here is a river which has been, it is called Sudarshana, wherein Shiva performed penance, Vishnu also performed penance, Brahma performed penance, and this way, this particular monument gets associated with all the Trinity. Now there is one small hill wherein a Shiva temple is there, and that is called the Kailasa temple. So herein we will find in the sacred geography, the main hill complex is called Meru, and then this is called the Kailas, wherein Shiva is there. So they have taken, then there is a sacred pond which is there, which is associated with Brahma. So all the three gods are there, but they are all in a way, the central divinity there is of course Renuka. Then there is a, if you see at the lower place, there is one Tirtha which is called the Sarva Tirtha. Now it is associated, it gets associated with Brahma and Parshurama, because when he wants to give libations to his dead parents, there was no water around, so he pierces the earth with his arrow, and from that a Tirtha comes out, and that becomes a river later on. But that Tirtha is used for the post-cremation ceremonies of his parents. Then there is one Jampatanatha. Now, as I told you, the whole Gondola dance that is performed to please Renuka Devi, who is an incarnation of the great Devi, he is a Bhuta. He is called a Bhutanatha. In fact, he is the son of Kali, that is, who is called the Bhuta Mata. And he has got association with, in fact, his original place is Chandrapur, where the Gond kings were living. And it may be mentioned in this connection that the Gond kings say, and the Gond area, the Gonds of that area say, that we are born of not a Purusha, a male. Our ancestor, the first ancestor, was not a male, but it was a woman, and she was Kali. So this Bhuta Mata, who made that dance very popular of the Gonds for the worship of Renuka Mata, now that Bhuta Mata's son Bhutanatha or Jampatanatha is there. And he is so important that he is something like the witness for a parikrama or for a pilgrimage which is done. That is also comes up. There are points we will have to some chance to explain it. So Jampatanatha is the witness for every pilgrimage. He will say in the heaven that, well, this man has done this parikrama, and therefore he must have that type of merit. So all those distinctive features which are connected with any holy place like Banaras, or for that matter, Prayag and other things, they are being imitated. And the monuments associated, let me mention here, that the monuments associated are right from the Yadava times. So this legend was definitely there. And the establishment, because there are references in the contemporary Marathi literature of 12th, 13th century regarding Renuka being this place, Datta being associated with this place, and different types of practices, this type of dance being performed to please both Datta as also Renuka, that also is there. Now, there is a concept as a big, any holy place will be there. In the center, you will see the small hill on which the Renuka temple is there. We already saw the image. If you can make out, I cannot make it expanded. A small 2 or 3 shrines are there. Those are the shrines of that place. then you have to walk about 150 steps, and then you reach the temple. Now, the Purana tells us that there are something like 4 gates from which you can, 4 sacred gates, which are in the north, in the east, and then in the west and in the south. So these are called, and all these are located from each other, not from the main place, located from each other about 7 crores, you can say about 21 miles. And we have actually identified these places. They are of course known. Some of them are known. We had to make more exploration and visit these places. And then we came to know that, well, what has been told in the Purana, it is very, say for example, there is a temple called Hatakeshwara. Now it has been converted into a dargah, but that is associated with a waterfall on a river, which is again associated with Vasuki, that is the serpents, nagas, and Vasai Ashrama is there. So Hatakeshwara temple is there in the east. Then the Vimaleshwara temple is there in the south. Then the western temple is there, Durjati Agnishwara. All these descriptions are there in that Purana. And Kapeshwara temple is there. Now, if you see the temple architecture, you will find that Vimaleshwara, which is a surviving oldest temple, it definitely goes to the Yadava period. So all these legions and also these sacred places which are supposed to be Sapta Krosha Yatra, that is from one place, it is 7 kroshas, that is about 21 kilometers. So a person performs this yatra visiting the inner gateways of this particular holy place. And within that, there are hundreds of small places, tirthas and places which have come up during this particular period, at least from the Yadava period. My own guess is that this definitely goes back to the Rashtrakuta period, because the legend about Renuka was already there in Devi Bhagavata, which is dated to 9th century AD. Some of the names of the Gond kings, say for example, Ballareshwara, it is a typical name associated with the Rashtrakutas. Rashtrakutas had a title called Vallabha Raja. One of their titles was Vallabha Raja, and its Marathi forms become Ballala. In fact, the Persian travelers, they also called Balara. So it is Vallabha Raja becomes Ballara, and many of the kings from the Gond family, they are called Ballaras. There is actually a place called Ballar Shah, wherein now a new paper factory has come up. So we'll find the antiquity definitely goes back, but the extant monument tells us that this was at least from all this region, and these Kshetras were at least from the Yadava period. Now, we have tried to reconstruct the whole thing. That is the different types of holy places which have come up. In the center, if you can see, this is the main temple, and here is the river Pranita, which is going practically around, and there is another river which joins this river. This is called the Poos River, and all these different places we have located, and this way we will find that this whole area, which is within the 4 Tirtha Kshetras. There are so many Tirtha Kshetras where they are already known, but we have made an attempt to put them on the map and in a way try to understand the whole the holy geography of this particular area. Now, there are, as I told you, there are 3 important Pithas in Maharashtra. Out of the 108 or 51 Pithas, because not every Pitha is included in the 51 Pithas, but 100 Pithas, there are mention of 3 Shaktiputers. Renuka Mata, of course, with which we are acquainted. Here you can see a picture of the present temple. Then Mahalakshmi, probably most of you also must be acquainted with Mahalakshmi. There is, because if I understand it correctly, in Karnataka and Kerala border, there is a southern Mahalakshmi temple, because this place is very much important. The antiquity of this place at least again goes to the Rashtrakuta period, and it was built historically by one of the kings in about 10th century of the Shilahara dynasty, and Shilaharas were the vassals of the Rashtrakutas and later on of the later Chalukyas. Then I mentioned about the tutelary deity of Shivaji Maharaj. This is Tulja Bhavani at Tuljapur. It is there. And there is one Saptashringi Vani where Maharashtrians believe that it is a Shaktiputers of the very ancient times, but it has not been referred to either in the 51 Peters or 108, and therefore it is called a Ardha Shaktiputers. But it is a very popular thing in and around, on Godavari again, in and around the Nasik area. Now we have these pictures, as I mentioned to you, these are the different pictures. This is the Atri Ashrama, where Datta and Durvasas, as also Chandra, who was the progenitor of the Soma family, they were all born here. That is what the legend tells you. And I had already shown you the shrine of Anasuya and her husband, Jamadagni. This is Vasuki Ashrama, and now it has been converted into Sheikh Salli Baba Dargah. So it is living monument, but under a different faith. Then, as every great Tirtha will have, as it has got inner gateways, similarly it has got the outer gateways also. In order to, in a way, project that it is one of the big Kshetras, as it is because of its inclusion in the 51 Shaktiputers. We'll say in the north is Prayag, that is the Bahirdwara. In the east is the Puri, where the Konarak temple is there. And in the west, it is Dwarka. And in the south, it is Srirangam. So you will find that the inner Peters, they are all associated with Shiva. The outer Peters, they are all associated with Vishnu. So this particular aspect of the holy places is to be taken into consideration. And the main deity, as I told you, is Devi. So all the three important, you can say, divinities of the Panchayatana Puja, as we call it, and for which the Shankaracharya Vidyaranya Swami of Sringeri Math is credited. He is called the Shanmata Sthapanacharya. He brought about reconciliation of the 6 darshanas which are connected with the agamas. That is the Vaishnava agama, then the Shaiva agama, then the Saura agama, then Ganesha agama, as also the Shakta agama. So we'll find that this particular trend should be noted by us. And this way, therefore, the Bahirdwaras, that is the outer gates of this holy place, are these 4 important places in India. Now we'll come back to this Gondhara tradition. You see, may I tell you that I happen to be a Deshastha Rigvedi Brahmin, as it is described in Maharashtra. There are Brahmins who are living in the coastal area, so they are Kokanastha Brahmins. There are Saraswat Brahmins who have come from Punjab and Kashmir. Those are Saraswat Brahmins who have spread themselves up to Kerala. They are followers of Madhva Sampradaya. And there are Kahada Brahmins who come from a place which is in the Ghats. So there are 3 main types of Brahmins, and we'll find that all the families, irrespective whether they are Brahmins or Kshatriyas or Vaishyas or the Shudras, will find that if any important event, auspicious event takes place, such as a wedding or any other thing, then it is to be celebrated with a Gondhar dance. And we'll find that, as I told you, there is a, you can say, mythic origin which has been given of the instruments which are used in this particular dance. For example, the drum, then the lute chandika, then there is a very clear description also that there should be minimum 8 or maximum, you can say, there should be 32 persons who should participate in it. They should hold torches, then they should have that drum and a typical type of a drum, which is now something like, as it can be described as Ankhya drum in Sanskrit terminology. So a drum which is held at the waist level. And it is a typical, you can say, Maharashtrian or a local type of pair of drums which are there. Then that single string instrument is there, which is called Chandaka. And then this musical dance was presented by Kali herself or Chamunda, and all the Bhutas they participated in. So it is a dance which is connected with the Bhutas and the Bhuta Mata, who is the Chamunda. Then, if you come to the literary side of the whole thing, it will be seen that this dance has been referred to, this dance is classified, can be classified as the Deshi dance as opposed to the Margi dance, that is, you can say the classical dances like Bharatanatyam, or for that matter, here Kuchipudi, that is the eastern type of dance, then the Assamic dance, as also the northern dance. So these are the classical types of dances, but this is called a Deshi dance. And it is not a dance as such. Again, dance is divided into two parts. A dance which is full-fledged, that is, you can say the classical, it has got Abhinaya, then it has got a particular type of dress, and it has got a Sthayi Bhava. So it is connected with the main, you can say, stream which has been described by Bharata in his Natya Shastra. Whereas these Deshi dances are probably folk dances. And they don't have that type of organization which is there in the classical dance, but they are folk dances which are performed on certain occasions, occasions of merriment, occasions of worship, and that type of thing. And they have been identified in the treatises on Sangeeta. Naturally, Sangeeta will mean Nartanam, Geeta, Vadanam. So it deals with the dance, then it deals with, you can say, vocal music, and it also deals with the instrumental music. So that is called Sangeeta in Sanskrit. So they will have all these things, and in that, one of the Deshi dances is the Gondali dance. There are other Deshi dances like Prerani and Prekshana, which have been referred to in the treatises. For example, there is one Jayasena, who was general of the Kakatiya king of the 13th century AD, and he describes in his treatise the music of the Gondali Nritya, as it's called. It is actually Nritya, which has got all classical modes of expressing itself, whereas Nritya has got certain expressions which are there associated with it, but not exactly Abhinaya to convey things. It conveys a mood, but does not convey the 8 rasas and other things which are associated with the classical dance. He says that Gondali Nritya has a Karnataka origin, because then he tells a legend that Someshwara III, who was a later Chalukyan king, ruling at Kalyani, a place called Kalyani, now in Karnataka. There is one Basava Kalyan, and this Kalyan which is there. It is hardly about 130 kilometers from the place where the Renuka Mandira is there, the hill and all that holy place is there. He says that in the court of Someshwara, who was the 12th century AD, in the middle of 12th century AD, a billi, that is, billa is a word used in Sanskrit to indicate a tribal man or a woman. Billi is a woman, a tribal woman, and explains that in Maharashtra Bhasha, the word billi means Gondali. And herein comes my argument that, well, the word Gondali, I stand to be corrected, because there are so many scholars who must be sitting there who have mastery in Telugu and other South Indian languages. But the simple logic which came to me was that Billi, Gondali iti Maharashtra Bhashayam. The word Gond in Kannada is for a tribe, or in coastal Karnataka. They are also known as Gondara or Gonda. In Telugu, it will be, I reconstruct, they are probably called Gondulu, that is the Gond tribe. And if Gondulu is tribe, as also it will mean a man from the Gonda tribe. And therefore, Gondali will mean a female Gond. And therefore, I say Gondali or Gondali, and the word Gondhali in Marathi or similar words in Karnataka and Telugu, they are connected with this Gondali. May I tell you that one of the persons who has worked on these dances from Tamil Nadu, he calls it Kundali, because in Tamil, probably Ka and Ga, they are interchangeable. And therefore, this dance is accepted. And now some of my friends, we are trying to find out their cultural representations either on the Hoysala temples or the temples of Andhra Pradesh. Curiously enough, this is one of the ways, one of my friends, he has sent me this picture, and he tells me that this is a Hoysala temple wherein there is, because there are persons in Gondali dance, there are not only drum beaters, there are, you can say, that instrument which are called percussion, not percussion instrument, but an instrument wherein strings are there, that is like veena, and there are persons who play upon venu, that is, you can say, who play upon the flute. So there is a representation, one of my friends tells me that, well, it is, he has identified because of the posture which is there, as also the flute which she is holding, that she might be a part, or it might be a representation of the Gondali dance. Then we'll find that Gondalis are there in different castes, whether there are Kshatriyas, then Mahars who are Shudras, Mangs who are, you can say, the scheduled castes. All these castes will have a subcaste of Gondalis, and those Gondalis will go and play this particular dance on, you can say, auspicious occasions. Fortunately for me, there is a beautiful representation, if you see in the middle here. Here is a person who is performing that dance, and here is a Devi who is there. And to please that Devi, this group is playing the Gondali dance. It is one of the earliest representations of this particular type of dance, which I got accidentally, and it's dated to something like 17th century AD. Now, the dress of the Gondali dance is very peculiar. I had an occasion to see some Gonds and paying, they come and pay their respect. Meaning last time when we were there, sometime in, you can say, Diwali season, the Telugu dancers, they had come, they were having peacock feathers on their crowns, but the Maria Gonds, on the left, which we are seeing, are the Maria Gonds. Now these Gond women, they are wearing a crown which is made of cowrie shells. And therefore it is told that once Parshurama, when he saw that the people were being harassed by a Kaparda Yaksha, a Kaparda demon who was in the, you can say, this ocean, that is Arabic Ocean, he killed him, and he brought the bones of this particular dance, of this particular demon, and offered to his mother. She was very pleased, and therefore all the Gondhari dancers, they wear this dance. For the Maria Gonds, it is compulsory that they should wear a crown of cowrie shells, as you are seeing. Then they wear even garlands, as also they wear armbands and a waistband also. It is compulsory when they perform their Maria Gond dance. It is very much compulsory. And on inquiry, I was told that cowrie shells are not easily available in this area. They are going to be very precious by these people. They have to be imported either from the Western, but more from Bengal, because they are more near to Bengal. They import or they purchase cowrie shells and they make their dress like that. And this dress, this part of the crown is very much compulsory for a Gondhari dancer. Now we'll come to the Gonds. You see, as I introduced to you, that this was probably a folk dance which was popular among the Gonds. The Gonds are a tribe. In fact, they call themselves a Toi-Ur, but all the urban people call them, or as the anthropologists had said, that the Hindus who live around, they call them Gonds. So this is a collective name for them. Their language is also known as the Gond language. It belongs to the Tamil group of languages, or the Tamil, you can say, language group. And so they live in an area right from something like Godavari Krishna up to Narmada. And as I explained to you, the whole area is called the Gondwan. They are forest tribes. The Maurya Gonds, as I told you, wear the same dress as, and so their Hinduization process, this term is again, I'm borrowing from scholars who have worked on in Orissa, and they have said that in India there is a very peculiar way of assimilating the tribal people within the Hindu society. I, as an archaeologist, described it in a different way. I said the process of Hinduization is still going on in India, and therefore I will say urbanization is still going on India, and this assimilation comes as a part of the urbanization which happened. We'll find that it is not again a coincidence that the concept of Shaktiputers does not go beyond 7th, 8th century. And most of the Shaktiputers are in tribal areas of Assam, Madhya Pradesh, and as I told you, this area was Dandakaranya. This was under the process of urbanization right from 6th century BC, as we know from the Buddhist as also the Ramayana accounts. And therefore we'll find that it is not a wonder. So this dance was taken over. The cult of worshipping Kali, or their mother goddess, you can say that their primordial mother, she was identified with Kali, that is Chamunda Kali, and all their mythology was also borrowed. So this way the whole process goes on. And then we'll find that inscriptions at Ramnagar, which was one of the fort areas, and Vishnupur, we'll find the inscriptions are there in Sanskrit. Then they worship all these different types of God. If you go to Chandrapur, I will show you some examples. They have built temples of Muralidhara, Rama, Shiva, especially of Mahakali and Ekavira at their capital, which was Chandrapur. There are 4 or 5 capitals. Ramnagar was there, then Chandrapur in Maharashtra, that district place, it is there, one of the capitals. Then Shirpur is there, and Shirpur is the capital, which is in Andhra Pradesh. So, and they have built about, you can say, about 30 forts in the medieval times. They were ruling this area. After the fall of the Yadavas, naturally they came to the fore and they become the rulers of this particular area. And one of the important things which can be noted, that the fort at Mahur was built by the Gonds themselves. It is their tutelary divinity. Again, there is a small temple of Kali, because she is supposed to be the incarnation of Parvati. And therefore, Kali Chamunda, there is a small temple in the fort itself. And that fort was built initially by the Yadava kings, later on taken over after the fall of the Yadavas by the Gonds who came up in the political arena. This is the Sanskrit inscription which has been issued at the instance of a Gond king. And he has given actually the temple was built by a Shreshti there and therefore it eulogizes Vishnu. And then it is said that Vishnupura Grama has been donated with the permission of the Gond king. So the temple was built by a Thakur, that is a Kshatriya, but the donation of the village, you can say assets, or you can say the taxes which are derived from the villages, they were given by the Gond king. Now, the history of the Gonds has been known, and in fact, they say that we are ruling here. A 16th century inscription is there of the time of a queen, Durgamati, who fought against Aurangzeb. So there is an inscription of that time, and they say that we have at least 52 generations who have been ruling here. So scholars, of course, epigraphists say that these are all fictitious names and other things. But I would say that there is a memory which is in the mind of these tribes that they have been there at least for last, you can say, 600 to 700 years. And they have been ruling there. Then we have got different types of, you can say, principalities in the Chanda area. So those have been recorded by the British rulers who came, the East India Company, who defeated the Bhoslas, whose vassals the Gonds were of Chandrapur and Ballar Shah. So we'll find that revenue records are there. Now these are the temples. This is the Achaleshwar temple. It is associated with that Jampatanath, son of Kali, who is to be worshipped at Renuka Mata's temple. It is at the foot of that hill. So Achaleshwar temple is there. Then these are virtually, you can say, images more than 12 to 15 feet high images, which have been made, of course, by a trader there, but they are there in a huge courtyard wherein at least 30, 40 such images are there. This is the Ganesha image. Then their monuments are like this. This is the Mahakali temple, which is supposed to be the tutelary deity, and Bhutanatha is supposed to be her son. There is a very interesting story about this Jampatanatha or Bhutanatha. Once he played mischief with the celestial nymphs who had come to bathe in the river nearby, and therefore his mother got very angry. So she said that I'm going to punish you, and therefore he fled away, and he goes to his aunt's place, that is Ekavira at Mahur, who is supposed to be the sister of Mahakali. So we'll find that all these legends which are current among the Gonds themselves, they are also to be seen here. And these are the temples built by the Gonds themselves in Nagara, or you can say the current, as we call in Marathi, the Hemadpanthi style. So they have their coronation, and not only that, all their ministers are Brahmins who have come from Andhra Pradesh. And therefore, this particular community, which has come from Andhra Pradesh, right from roughly, you can say, at least 12th, 13th century, or even 15th century, they are settled, and now they have become part of the Maharashtrian Brahmin community. And they are specifically known because of their surname, which ends with Var. So that means they come from the Andhra area. And the whole area which I indicated to you, right from something like Narmada to Godavari and then Krishna, in this area, all these Andhra Brahmins, they have come and settled because they were the administrative officers and ministers of the. Now, these are the type of monuments they erected. So they were capable. They had become urban, and therefore they built forts like this. Say, for example, this is the Sirpur fort, which is in Andhra Pradesh now. And so they had come up to that particular level, and they built monuments in the medieval style, which was current at the time of the Sultans. So this is the fusion of the Indian and you can say Saracenican architecture, as it is called many times. But you can say the Indo-Muslim architecture. These are some of the monuments which they have created. For example, this is the gateway to the city of Chanda. Then this is another gate which is there. Then these are the mausoleums which have been created. After their cremation, temples are built, or samadhis, as we are, cenotaphs have been built, and they have been built in the contemporary, imitating the type of architecture which was followed by the Marathas. Here in this area, the architecture from Odisha, the architecture from Maharashtra, and the Islamic architecture, there is a fusion of that, and therefore these monuments are very much similar to the monuments which are created by the Nagpur Bhoslas in Nagpur area. So they are becoming urban, you see. And they are building monuments, they are having institutions, as also other type of, these are the other images. Here is the Matsya Avatara, then the Kurma Avatara, then here is Hanuman, as we can make it. So there is a huge courtyard, and there are about more than these colossal images are there. You'll be surprised to know that coins also were issued by these Gond kings. Once they had become independent. So these are coins which have been issued in Devanagari script. The legends are in Devanagari script, but there is one coin. These are silver coins, and they have issued also some gold coins. You will be surprised to know that what we call them as tribals or something like that, they had become very much urban. They had formed their own, you can say, Kshatriya clans, or they took themselves to be Kshatriyas, and they issued coins like the other contemporary kings of that area. And very curiously enough, one coin which has been issued by them, they say that we are the descendants of Pulastya Muni, and that legend has been written in Telugu. So they come from Andhra Pradesh, then they identify themselves. Now their mother is Kali, and then they say that they are the descendants of Pulastya Muni. They are not calling themselves descendants of Ravan. Please remember, because as the legend will have it, the whole family was totally annihilated in the battle with Rama. So it is Vibhishana who was the remaining person. So indirectly they are saying that we are the descendants of Vibhishana. And instead of saying it as Vibhishana, they will trace their origin to some sage who was Pulastya, who obviously, as we know, married a Rakshasi, and then he became. I don't know how much time I have got, but I'll finish in something like 10 minutes. I will stress the aspect of these things from a different angle. You see, there is all these legends which you have studied, according to me, have some symbolic meaning. The main characters are, for example, Renuka. I have already explained to you that now Mahur emerges as one of the Shaktiputers. Its antiquity probably goes back to 9th century. It was definitely there in 11th and 12th centuries during the Yadava period, because there are literary references to that. And this process now, if I have been able to convey to you, that the way their architecture is there, then they established their kingdoms. They were earlier called something like Zamindars, only landholders, big landholders, meaning Mughals always refer to them, but they themselves were having their chiefdom within their tribal units and became kings. They were coronated, and they had ministers called from Andhra Pradesh, and these were Brahmin ministers who were their civil servants. There is most important is, according to me, the legend of Parshurama. Actually, this legend was definitely formed only in a later period after something like 9th, 10th century. Definitely. Because otherwise, Parshurama is connected with the Western India. In fact, Bhadoj, the place, a very famous place in Gujarat, is called Bhadoj because it is derived from Sanskrit name Bhrugu Kachcha. That is the run of Kachch, which is named after the Bhrugus, because the Bhrugus were there. I won't again go into the details. The Bhrugus are supposed to be the priests of the Asuras. They have so many things, you can say, shared with the Iranian people, you can say. So they were something like between the Vedic Aryans who were there, and on the other side, the Iranians, and they are some of the ancient rishis. He is born in that family. So now we'll find that he has been transplanted into this particular area through Renukādevī. And if you remember the story of Parashurama, the earlier story which appears in Mahabharata, we'll find that as he had conquered the whole Prithvi, he gave back it to Kashyapa, Prajapati, so that he didn't want to hold the land as a king or something like that. He was Brahmin. And therefore, Kashyapa made a very good condition. He said that if I want to re-establish all the Kshatriya families, which he did, he said that you are exiled from this Prithvi. So he goes to the coastal area. He goes to Andhra Pradesh. He goes to Konkan. And in Mahabharata, there are references clearly telling that Dharmaraja, when he goes on his pilgrimage, comes up to, you can say, that Orisan river, that is Mahanadi. He comes there and then tells that here are the regions of Kalinga where nobody goes. These were tribal areas. Only Parashurama has gone, he says. And so Parashurama, when he is exiled, he is associated with the tribal people. He comes to the western coast where his father's ashrama is there. So Ruchika's, his grandfather's ashrama is there near Sopara. So all this area was it was not urbanized, and we know it archaeologically as also historically, and therefore Parashurama is associated with that. Then there is another story in the Kalika Purana wherein it is told that now Parashurama is there in Assam, and he is again associated with the Shaktiputers. So Parashurama is something like a vanguard of urbanization. This whole process of Hinduization, I don't call it Hinduization, I will say this is the process of urbanization in which the urban Hindu society, they assimilated with the tribals, they accepted their divinities, they accepted so many their rituals, they are also, you can say, performing arts and other practices. And this way the assimilation went on. So wherever Parashurama is associated, I say that he is something like, whenever in Purana there is a reference, he is the vanguard of the urbanization movement which was there in India. Then Datta also is very important. And that Datta is that well, as I told you, we are associated with Tantric Hinduism. There is a shift after 10th, 11th century, and the Nathapantha was a sort of a reform against this, because Matsyendra, whose guru, was part of the Tantric tradition. In fact, he comes and he takes out of that Tantric tradition and establishes a new fold which was following the Advaita Vedanta, but at the same time open to all the sections of the society. So here is a reform which is coming up, wherein monks are coming from all the different parts of India, different sections of the society. And Datta is associated with that. And in the third stage, as I told you, that he is connected with the Sanatana Dharma, because in the later period, after the sultans had established their tradition, there was a need felt, and Datta becomes a symbol of the rejuvenation of the Sanatana Dharma tradition. In fact, he says that don't serve the Yavana kings. That is not your, and he asks them, and this way he becomes a reformer. So he is there associated with the things which are very important in that area. He was there to spread the cult of Renuka, wherein liquor and other things are moved. So he is associated with that. But when the times required, he also became a vanguard of the movement of rejuvenation of the Sanatana Dharma. I will again emphasize another thing, and that is the cult of Renuka. So here is the cult of Renuka, which was probably current among the Gonds, as we know from their mythology, as also their own adherence and establishment of different types of temples connected with Mahakali. And Renuka Mahatmya does refer to this particular region which I told you about, Bhutanatha. Bhutanatha, originally from Chanda, coming to Mahur and taking shelter with his aunt, that is Renuka Mata. Now, when we consider, let me explain the whole thing, and this sheds a welcome light on not only what was the process of whether you call it Hinduization, which was in Southeast Asia, and Sades, a French scholar, he called the Hinduized states of Southeast Asia. So he has accepted this concept of Hinduization, which is there, and then I call it actually the urbanization, which is still going on in India. And then in this process, these new gods and goddesses emerge. The old gods have a different form altogether, and they shed light on understanding what exactly is Hinduism. According to me, in short, if I have to tell, that Pravritti Dharma was the Vedic sacrifices. There was, to explain it in terms of Marx, if Pravritti Dharma or the sacrificial religion was something like the thesis, Nivritti Dharma was the antithesis. The Upanishad, the way of life of the Upanishad, that is renunciation. You will find Buddhism, Jainism, and also Vedic things, they following Nivritti as the process. Then there is a reconciliation in the form of the Agama Dharmas, wherein we say, like Bhagavad Gita's Karma Yoga, you need not renounce the world in order to get salvation. So Agama Dharmas, which are there in Shaiva, Shakta, then Saura, all these, they are meant for householders. If they want to become, they can become. Say, for example, the Vaishnava, Ramanuja, there are some monks. Ramanuja himself was a monk, but he never told the common man to renounce the world in order to get moksha. He says that through bhakti you can get it. In Maharashtra, Jnaneshwar, who was a Nathapanta yogi, himself was a renunciant, but he made popular the cult of Uttava, wherein the common man through devotion can attain salvation. So this is another part of the whole thing, that is the Pravritti Dharma and then Nivritti Dharma of the Upanishads. The Pravritti Nivritti Dharma or Pravritti Para Nivritti Dharma, which is of, you can say, the cult of Uttava and other type of things. Then last is, you can say, when all these people are assimilated, and then there is a counterpart of that, that is the dharma which is told by the Dharma Shastras of Manu, for example, wherein the reconciliation is there of Pravritti and Nivritti, saying that Pravritti should be there in your earlier life, then you renounce in the old age. So that was the dharma of the Smritis. So there is one, Pravritti, the pure sacrificial religion, then Nivritti, the pure renunciatory Upanishad, Sankhya Yoga. Then the third is the reconciliation in the form of the Smriti Dharma, Smarta Dharma. And then this is the Karma Yoga type of thing, which is an offshoot of that Sankhya Yoga or Bhagavad Gita. And these type of kshetras are for the persons who have been assimilated anu. So when the bones were assimilated, we are not going to tell the philosophy of the Upanishads or the higher philosophies of Ramanuja or other Vaishnava Agamas. So when they are assimilated, naturally the cult is given a high pedestal, and the Tirtha Yatra and then Tirtha Kshetra, this is the fifth aspect of Hinduism. So when we talk about Hinduism, all these five aspects, they have to be taken into consideration. And I'm sure that with the help of the type of work which we have done, that is the study of the Gondar dance, as also the monuments and the inscriptions, as also the coinage and other things, there will be a new chapter which will be added in the history of the Deccan. I say specifically Deccan because it is connected with Karnataka, it is connected with Andhra, as also Maharashtra. I think I'll stop with that, and I think I have not taken too much of your time. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, they are welcome.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah, if you can stop the sharing. Yeah, thanks. That's Dr. Jamkhedkar. It was really interesting. You touched upon so many topics. I'm really wondering, where to start. I will touch upon few questions that I have, and based on some conversations here as well. So let me start from the very basic question. Now, to what extent can we take Puranas to offer valid clues to history? Your initial, the thing is, how much can we take as history there, and then the fantastical elements there?
You see, if you take Puranas, naturally they are consisting of myths and legends. Now the myths and legends, for example, which have been told in the Amali Grama Mahatmya, they are supernatural things. In fact, they go to the extent of saying that the area where the temple is there and the area which is covered within the rhombus, as I can call it, of the Saptakoshi Yatra, there are more than 100 tirthas which are there. So those tirthas, they came up, and there will be great mythic stories, how Brahma came there, performed penance, then Shiva came there when he was holding the attached head. So Kapala Mochi. Now that legend goes to actually Banaras, where the Kapala Mukteshwara temple is there. But then here the same legends have been used and they convey a different message. So they should not be taken literally, as no myth should be taken. But they have, as one can say, something like the people's memory, the eternal memory of the people, and it expresses itself in a mythic language. And
Okay.
to put, if you take into consideration the political and social situations from something like 13th to 17th century, any historian will say that, well, all Hinduism has gone to tatters, or it is being destroyed or something like that. But it is movements like this, whether it is the agamic movement like the yogis, Nathapantha yogis, or for that matter, the other yogis, Vaishnava yogis were there in Maharashtra. These people have upheld society, and they have given a new message remaining within the framework, which is very rich for us. As I told you, it is the Nivritti Dharma is there, Pravritti Dharma is there, then Agama Dharma is there, the Smarta Dharma is there. So there is a lot to choose from, and these people are trying to find out some good way to be followed for a pious way for the common people who don't know Sanskrit, who don't know the other big languages and philosophies, but there is a new way of life which has been given to them, with the help of which they can not only sustain, but sometimes prosper, as I told you in the case of the Gonds.
Now, the whole story of Gonds in this whole presentation is extremely interesting on two counts. I mean, for me,
and as I can tell you, there are two entries in the medieval history of the Deccan, which is supposed to be a standard book on the Deccanese history. It's a Gond tribe, Gondwana, an area between Narmada and Krishna, wherein the Gonds live. This is the only entry. They don't take notice of, as I told you, there are 4 or 5 branches of the Gonds.
Right.
So one branch ruled near Narmadas, the second branch, which had sub-branches, 2 branches in Maharashtra, and 1 branch in Andhra Pradesh.
Right.
So these Gonds were consolidating themselves once the big Hindu kingdoms were lost. They came forth and established their own way of life, and they had their own expression. As I told you, they had taken the Islamic architecture, they had taken the traditional, you can say, dry masonry architecture for the temples, and they had their own style. There are at least 250 Gond temples which are yet to be studied.
Right. No, that's the point that I'm coming to. So first comes the political power, right, which then allows them to negotiate a relationship with other people. Now, in this case, I'm basically considering everybody as a tribal group. So Gond as a tribe, because they have power, can employ others to work for them, can then on equal footing establish their presence by way of inscriptions. Sorry, please go ahead, sir.
No, please.
So, just a couple of lines only. Establish their temples, give coins, and that very process of doing all of this, they are establishing that they are no way inferior to anybody. On their own terms, they can create a relationship, right? But that is a process which did not happen across India. Other tribes to the same extent.
I tell you that the words utilized, first thing, Iravati Karve was the person who said that the origin of the caste is in our, you can say, ethnic communities who were assimilated. First thing. Why there are 2,000 castes in India? They were not because of the split of the 4 varnas or something like that. New people with different ethnic backgrounds, that is religious faith, then their robes, their, you can say, styles of performing arts, music and other things. They were, now the Gond music and Gond, you can say, dance has been given a status in our treatises written in Sanskrit as the dance style, you see. So there is a place in that. and they get their own respect, their own place. I will tell you a small story from my own life, you see.
Sure.
When I was working as a lecturer, I was young, about 27 or 28 years old.
Okay.
I was the youngest person. Then you might have heard about Niyogi, Dr. Niyogi, who was,
Right. Yes.
who was the Chief Justice of the Central Provinces Supreme Court. In those times, there were Supreme Courts. So
Right.
he retired as that. He gave his bungalow to the Department of Ancient Indian Culture. So we housed their department there. The lower story was the museum, upper story was faculty and classrooms.
Okay.
So there was a peon who used to welcome everybody, because all of us were sitting up, no, and only the clerical staff was on the ground floor.
Okay.
There was a superintendent who was our chief of the administrative unit. Now this
Okay.
man, whenever anybody, small child or anybody will come, he will give them water, he will offer them a cup of tea. A provision was made that well, people should be welcome to this museum.
Okay.
So I observed that this man is not giving tea to or water to our superintendent, who was the head of the administrative department. No,
Okay.
I asked him, how come that you don't give anything to Meshram? He said, now Meshram is a community which has come from Gonds. Now he says that I am a Rajgond, I am a Kshatriya. I will give water to you.
Right. Right.
So people, you see, in Hinduism, the four varnas, they are something like an indication of your status in the society. So those chiefs who became urban, as I call it, I don't call them Hindu, as they became urban, naturally identified themselves as Kshatriyas. Whereas those who remained in the lower professions of tending cows and other things, they naturally were treated. They come from the same stock, but one becomes a Shudra, the other becomes a Kshatriya.
Okay.
This is the funny thing.
Okay. There is a question from Leela Shirodkar. Says, since when did Dattatreya come to be portrayed as a three-headed god with Brahma Mahesh as the image shown during the presentation? As the image shown during the presentation was only single-headed.
Medieval period.
Okay.
No, it is Dattatreya, because the story is there that the Anasuya, who was the wife of Atri, now they wanted to test her chastity.
Right.
The three gods. That is the normal thing, no? Indra goes on doing it, and these three gods. And therefore, they went and they said that you should serve food to us. But then they said that this is a popular story.
Right.
That particular element is not there in the Purana story. They said that it has been given a different context altogether, that she, in a way, helps the gods to revive the rising of the sun, because one Sati had cursed sun not to rise at all. Because she was given a curse by another Muni that at the sunrise your husband will die. So she said, let not the sun rise. And then there was there was havoc. So they said, how we can solve the problem? They said the Anasuya can solve the problem. So they come to this place and tell her that you please convince that other lady to take back her oath of or spell of truth.
Right.
Then she takes up, and therefore they are pleased. They say that mother would like to give you something. She says, I'm your mother. Who are you to bless me? And so when they insist, she says that you should be born to me as my sons. And so you can say Brahma is born as Vishnu is born as Dattatreya. Then Brahma is born as Durvasas, who is again and son of Atri, and Mahesha is born as Durvasas, and the third is born as the moon, from whom the whole, you can say, Kaurava dynasty rises.
Right.
So he is the moon, Soma. So they are brought here. And then when this particular myth became very important in Maharashtra, they have a three-headed Vishnu.
Right.
To make eternal this particular religion.
Right. In the iconographic form, I remember that there is one in one of the caves of Ellora, of the Dattatreya, when you have Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma standing next to each other in a certain particular form, I think it is identified as Dattatreya. I'm not sure.
No, Dattatreya is not there. To my knowledge, it is not there. You probably, if you can give me the exact reference.
No, I will. I will check. I will send you some details.
Sure. But Dattatreya is not depicted. As I told you, it is a very late god, and the whole activity, except the Jains, does not continue beyond the Yadavas. So the whole activity at Ellora, whether it is Shaiva, Vaishnava, or Buddhist comes to an end by 8th century, 9th century.
Okay.
The Pashupata tradition continues even beyond the Yadavas, till the Yadava period. Then also it vanishes. Only the Jain tradition continues. And all these legions now with three-headed Dattatreya, they are definitely post-Yadava.
Okay.
And therefore, they are not to be found at Ellora.
Okay. I will check it up because I remember seeing something in T.A. Gopinath Rao's on iconography.
Elements of iconography.
Yeah, he does mention this. Anyway, let me take a look at it and I'll come back to you. Now, going back to one particular area which could be seen as controversial, sir, at least in Tamil Nadu, at least when intellectuals talk about these assimilation as more as appropriation. Okay. So the typical story that is presented here, and I will just, 1 minute, I will just present it. And then I want your opinion on this, is that the general prevailing, predominance for theory is that Hinduism, as we now know it, has basically spread over a variety of tribal cultures, eating away and destroying and assimilating all the local traditions, and is therefore an usurper. Now, this is the predominant theory here in Tamil Nadu, from what I can gather. The other part, you were in your presentation, you have been, you use specifically as, as more like urbanization. You see it as a sort of an enriching process, whereas a considerable section that we notice is more of, it's somehow the tribal religions have some kind of preeminence which was taken away by the Vedic Puranic versions. So I want your opinion on this.
I differ. I can give you, I will explain it in a very traditional manner.
Okay.
And it is called Anvaya Vyatireka.
Okay.
That is, by contrast, you can explain certain things.
Sure, please.
You see, as I am studying, you see all the Indian major religious traditions, Jainism, Buddhism, and you can say the Vedic tradition, or Hinduism, as we call it popularly now. You see, Hinduism was covering Jainism and Buddhism also, before the sultans came. In fact, it was referred to. I won't go into that topic and will not dwell upon it. You see, the basic common feature of all these religions, higher religions, of the Gangetic plain, you can call it.
Okay.
Gangetic, and you can say the Sindhu plain, that is the Indus plain. They have, when the Nivrittipara tradition comes, renunciatory tradition comes in between 8th century BC to 6th century BC, or even 4th, 5th century BC. When all these, they come to the fore, we'll find that they have one common thing, and that is Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparita. So these are the 5 vows which have been told very popularly by Nehruji as our tradition of Panchashil, as they call it. One thing is there, that when all these 3 religious traditions they spread, Buddhism spread all over Asia. all over
Okay.
Asia. And what happens? We do the Ceylonese say that, well, all these, because they don't, we are now calling Hinduism as one aspect of that. Do you mean to say that Buddhism went and destroyed all the local traditions of Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka was urbanized, you can say, by 6th century BC. That is how the literary tradition tells. Now the new archaeological evidence say that the earliest Brahmin inscriptions are in Sri Lanka. We won't go again into that. But there were cultures, they became, because of the trade which was between East and West, and Ceylon and India, the tip of the subcontinent, they are the central point. Naturally, there were so many forces which came.
Right.
And in that naturally Buddhism went to that place. There is a story that Mahindra was sent by Ashoka and all those things. Now, do those people complain that Buddhism destroyed our indigenous traditions?
Right.
You cannot say that, because there is another thing which is there, that when our religions they spread, no king has gone to Cambodia. No Chola or Pallava or for that matter Pala or any king or the Rashtrakutas, they never went to Southeast Asia. Only the monks went, and along with them, only the traders went, and along with them, may I tell you that a bell, it's a bronze bell, was found on the shores of one of no king must have gone there. Nobody went. So these people, when they went there, naturally, as we were you see, urbanization comes to Southeast Asia in 5th, 6th century AD. Before that is the megalithic and Neolithic period there. I am talking in terms of archaeology. So after that, the kingship, the concepts of the state and other things, they came after these merchants went there. Actually, Chinese were also going, but they allowed them to remain in their own way. It is, and that is why I specifically use this word, urbanization. We brought urbanization to Southeast Asia. The script which are current there, whether it is Cambodian, Thai, or Burmese, or whatever it is there, and our script, when it goes to Japan, it is called the Siddha script. So only sacred mantras of the Buddha, they are written in Devanagari. What is similar to Devanagari. Otherwise, all the scripts of Southeast Asia, they are derived from Brahmi. It is a scientific truth, which I will not say.
No, except Chinese and Korean, everything else is Brahmi driven. Yeah.
But they never thrust upon them the language. The language was studied, Pali was studied, or Sanskrit was studied only as a part of their religious understanding of the Dharma. So we never thrust upon them the script. Only our culture was there. Vaishnava, Shaiva, you read the inscription. There is one inscription of 1,000, you can say, verses in Sanskrit. The footnote will be in Khmer language, for which they use our script.
Yeah, I have a question here.
Though there is another thing. So we never deprived, when our religion spread there, to destroy their ethnic identities. Their dresses remain the same. There in South India, all the languages remain the same. The script is derived from Brahmi. Sanskrit, when it is introduced, the that 7th, 8th century, that new script comes in, which is a mixture of the Tamil script, which is derived from Brahmi, and the current, you can say, version of Brahmi. So we'll find that we never wipe out the ethnic identities of the people. Their languages are the same. In South India, the languages are the same. Whereas now I will give the contrast. Whenever the Abrahamic religions, Jews never spread their religion. It is the community of the chosen people of the God. They say that we don't accept people from outside. When Islam and Christianity came, You see, Christianity went to Americas. They came to India and took our people as slaves in West Indies and other places, or Mauritius and other places, because we are good planters. So Indians, others were slaves. Africans were slaves. Have you heard about a novel called Roots? It is written by an American African. Because he says that I have been converted to Christianity, but my Christianity is not the higher Christianity, because there will be so many things which are there, which have remained from Africa. So we don't know. I don't know where my roots are. So he goes to Africa to search his roots. His ethnic identity has been wiped out. First of all, he speaks only English, Spanish. You go to Australia. What is the language? It is English. You go to New Zealand.
Right.
The original settlers were Maoris.
Maoris.
Where are they now? They are in the museums. That does not. Whenever the Indic religions they spread, they don't wipe out the ethnic identity. And therefore, this is clearly a process of assimilation. And as you will find with this illustration of Renuka, it was a goddess which was worshipped by the Gonds. When they became urban,
right,
their mother, who was the first from whom they were born, she was identified with Kali. Mahakali, one of the great mothers, became their tutelary divinity. When they marry or get consecrated, all the Brahmanical rites are used, but then at the same time, after marriage, they also marry in their own tribal way.
Okay.
Their names are, the king's names are, you can say Sanskrit or something like that. Their culture remains the same. It is different. So it is assimilated. So the culture is never thrust upon them. On the other hand, their goddess has been accepted as an incarnation of Renuka Devi, or you can say Parvati. So is it destroying the identity of the people, the culture of the people? Gondhar dance is very important. As I told you, in a Brahmin family, when a wedding is there, you have to perform the Gondhar dance and call those people to perform that dance. Now, is it subjugation? It is respecting their religious beliefs and on their level. There are different levels, no? As I told you, in Hinduism, the Smarta religion is there, then the Vedic religion is there, then the Agamic religion, Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra, and other things are there. But these Tirtha Yatra and simple other things, their rituals, they have been provided to these people and they respect it.
Right.
It is not thrust upon them. That is what is my meaning. People may say that, well, I am trying to defend Hinduism or something like that. But the contrast is very clear. And according to me, the process of urbanization is still going on. You go to Europe, the whole Christianity is there. What are the cultures which are left now? When Christianity goes, or for that matter, Islam goes, everything is wiped out. That does not happen in India. If that is also resented, I can understand theoretically at a particular level, but according to me, it doesn't have really worthy meaning of what they say. As I told you, these people themselves call themselves as the descendants of Pulastya Muni.
Right.
Pulastya Muni, please remember, not Ravana. Pulastya Muni, we are descendants of Pulastya Muni. It was one of the ways to give them identity, because Pulastya Muni's one wife was Rakshasi. In a way, in other terms, in archaeological terms, anthropological terms, she was a tribal. And we are the descendants of that. What harm is there? Pulastya is one of the respected Munis, and he is given the ancestry of these people, which they acknowledge. So they are given a separate identity. And when they say that the caste system is something like a blot on Hinduism, caste system was the most non-violent way of assimilating people at different cultural levels. within, and therefore Hinduism is not a religion, it is a way of life. It is not a religion. It is not necessary that you should do all the things as told by a Brahmin or something like that. You can have your own shaman. As I told you, in the case of Renuka, the worship is performed by the local shamans who are not Brahmins.
Right.
And curiously enough, a Matangi, Matanga is a tribe, no? And they were supposed to be, they were the mercenaries. Anybody is to be hanged or any such thing, it is done by monks in our side. Now Matangi, so a woman, Matangi woman, when one worships Tulja Bhavani, it is not a Brahmin lady who is to be fed, a Matangi who is married and has got sons, she is to be fed, she is given fees. Now, is it exploitation?
Right.
You see, Hinduism, Buddhism, they happen to be higher religions as they are called. It is connected with the urban society, as to put it simply. And therefore, I call this whole process not as Hinduization also, I call this as urbanization.
Urbanization.
An Indian way. This, it will take some time. I don't know this terminology, how it is accepted. I'm not bothered about it. At least I'm happy to find out a good term to explain this whole process, according to me. People may change, people may disagree. I have nothing to say.
Right. No, it's see, the reason why I even asked the question. So I wanted to get your viewpoint on this whole process of how it is seen in certain places.
May I tell you another thing now? That there was a lecture by one of the anthropologists who studied the tribes of India in Asiatic Society of India. Yeah, Mumbai. What he said in his lecture, and we have published that lecture, I will send you a copy of that. He said that we have to regard with respect all the traditions of the tribals. You should not have your minds and other things, because a hill might be something like a god to them. So we have to respect them. What Hinduism has done? It has done the same thing in all these years, see, right from, especially from 7th, 8th century. That we respected their local traditions. They were happy with that. And we had a good communication. Now, those who don't accept the Varna concept and being against the French Revolution concept of equality, they are hypocrites, according to me. Because this equality tells you equality in terms of, this equality is very clear. You see, practically speaking, all men are equal before the law. All men are equal regarding opportunities to get. And all men are equal when they attain the age of 18. They have a vote which is equivalent to the vote of any other person in the country. But the hierarchy, when you have a complex society, urban society, hierarchy is bound to be there. Only this hierarchy should not affect this basic, intrinsic, you can say, value of treating other persons as your equals.
Now, so just one final question. A question from Sri Priya Srinivasan. She wants to know about this Renukādevī cult. Has it gone beyond Indian borders? Or what is the spread, if at all?
Renukādevī cult is more restricted in this particular form. In this particular form, it has remained in the Deccan, you can say. Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and to some extent even Gujarat. It has gone there. The same thing about Dattatreya also. In all these three stages of mythical development, as I explained to you, he is more popular in this region only. More popular, as it was.
In Tamil Nadu, there is a, again, let's say, not one of the Puranic goddess. There's somebody called Draupadi Amman.
No, she is Draupadi. No, I was there in a seminar on Mahabharata convened by Nandita Krishnan.
I'm also not sure whether the origin is from Mahabharata, but it's spread across multiple small towns in Tamil Nadu. And
as I told you, people fail to understand in a rational manner to interpret the myths. Now, Draupadi is definitely a character from Mahabharata.
Correct.
But there is an institution wherein the mother goddess is the most important for every village.
Right, right.
Now, because of her popularity, at a particular time when this institution started, they thought that Draupadi was probably the best nomenclature for her.
Right.
She's not
right.
Draupadi, definitely. But then she becomes a symbol, and they found that, well, Draupadi being one of the satis, 5 satis, well, she can be called Draupadi. That's all. I look at it this way.
Okay. No, this is fascinating. Actually, you opened up a certain direction of looking at this how gods of different groups and cultures become sort of more universal from a smaller region to a wider people, and in the process take on additional characteristics. The process of this whole process is really fascinating. There's no doubt.
And one thing, it is not destructive, because basically,
absolutely.
No, basically, that is why I call this process a non-violent process of urbanization.
Right.
Giving respect to ethnic identities and bringing people together to an urban level.
Right.
Without disturbing their real way of life. They won't like.
Right.
So, as far as possible, don't disturb. That is interpreted in a different way, that we kept them, you see, vanchita, that we deprived them of the knowledge or something like that.
Right.
How a tribal will be interested to recite the Vedas or something like that? He won't be. On the other hand, his gods, they are brought into the very. May I tell you, Peshwas were Brahmins.
Right.
In the medieval period, they were something like, you can say, they were rulers.
Right.
De facto rulers, but they never disrespected their king.
Right.
Who was a descendant of Shivaji. Now, the Peshwas are supposed to be in Maharashtra, like Tamil Nadu. You see, it is another state where I don't know how people will take it. People don't like Brahmins.
Right. You are right. You are right.
Now, I'll put it in very soft terms that people don't like Brahmins. Now, these very Brahmins, in their own chapel, which was there in the house, was Khandoba. Khandoba is a tribal god on which a German, you can say, anthropologist, Sontheimer, has worked a lot. These were the, you can say, herding communities in Maharashtra.
Okay.
But their god is assimilated with Shiva. A new mythology is created, not deliberately to fool people, but it has come up accordingly. The Peshwas used to have that god worshipped in their own chapel.
Okay.
They gave inams, land and other grants to the main temple, which is near Satara.
Okay.
Near in Pune district only. Okay. And the followers of this community, which is called the Dhangar community, it is a herding community. Do you know that the Maharaja of Baroda, that the Maharaja of Indore, they were from this community and they were attendants of the Peshwa. They used to look after as a person who looks after the horse or something like that.
Right.
When their valley, they proved their valiance in the wars, they were made kings by the Peshwa.
Okay.
And now they are known as Kshatriyas.
Okay.
Is it destroying their identity? Now, you call them, you see, Holkars, they are meaning they are married into all the important Rajput families of the.
Okay.
Maharani Gayatri Devi, who was a Rajput queen, was granddaughter of Sayajirao Gaikwad, who was a shepherd.
Okay.
Whose ancestors were shepherds. So they are elevated, you see.
Right.
So is this a bad process?
Got it. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for, you see, it was Kumutai who insisted that I must give a lecture. Otherwise, I'm busy in so many things.
I know.
Volumes. But I said that here is an opportunity to give voice to a, you can say, sympathetic audience. I take it like that.
Right.
To put forward some of my observations and some of my hypotheses. I won't say my theory or something like that, but a hypothesis to understand Indian medieval history in a different manner.
Absolutely. I mean, we have taken more than 2 hours, and you have been very patient in, in detailed lecture and also the question and answer session. I have a lot of questions to ask, but I know I will stop. I don't want to take more of your time. Thank you, sir. It was fantastic. It had great insights, and I hope many of the listeners will take it up from here and try to find out more about what is happening in their own regions. There is so much more to really study and understand in this.
So much of material.
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be in a new type of audience, and especially when I heard about your all that tradition of having a lecture every first Saturday in the month.
Yes, sir.
So I was fascinated by that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Extend my compliments and regards to all the persons